One of the questions I get asked most often is how to become a full stack developer. Now, if you don't know what a full stack developer is, it's basically someone who works on the front end and the back end. So how things work behind the scenes and then how things look to the user. Now, it makes sense that you guys are interested in becoming a full stack developer because these jobs are very in demand and demand is just increasing. They pay very well and it's a very interesting job to have. You're working on a lot of different things at once. And today I thought I'd make a video to help you guys become a full stack developer and, kind of make that whole process easier. So I've been a full stack developer in the past and, working on back-end APIs and then how things look on the front end using like React. So it really is a position that is very rewarding. But before we get to that, let's just talk about what a full stack developer does, what a front end developer does, what a back end developer does, and then some steps on how you guys can become a full stack developer. So if you're new to the channel, my name is John Vine. What we do here is we talk about software engineering. I try to use my experience to help you guys become full-time software developers. Right now, about 90% of you guys that watch the channel aren't subscribed. So if you enjoy the content, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free for you and it means so much to me, and you can always unsubscribe. So to understand what a full stack developer does, you have to understand what a front end and a back end developer do. So a front end developer basically works on what the user sees. So think of a website or an iOS app or an Android app. You open it up and there's a lot of different UI and a lot of different components that you see, different colors. That's what a front end developer does. And now they're not only working on how it looks, but they're also implementing like UI changes and the experience for the user. So front-end developer is actually very awesome. And in the past, I thought it was really good when I got to see, in my first job especially, I was working on a front-end, I was working on a React application. And then, when I got to testing and I got to see the website that I built myself, it's actually really rewarding. Front-end development, I would recommend starting off with if you're a beginner, because I think it'll really boost your confidence in the beginning, especially because you get more instant feedback and you can kind of see what you're building. And I think it's just something that you can easily build upon as a beginner. Now, a backend developer, what a backend developer does is they work on how everything works behind the scenes. So, server requests, databases, building APIs, building endpoints, making sure you're, parsing data and the security is tight. So the backend development, I would say, is slightly more complex. But together, if you can do both, that puts you in a really good spot. And that's where full stack development comes in, right? A full stack developer basically does, everything. And it's not like you're working on everything at once. Sometimes you're working on the front end, sometimes you're working on the back end, but you really do get a wide array of experience as a full stack developer. And you're not only working with the front end and the back end, but you're also, maintaining databases, maintaining relationships, and how you're fetching and storing things in the database. And that is also in and of itself very interesting as well. And so when you put this all together, you're working on how it looks on the front end, how things work on the back end, and you're basically covering all the spots of a project. It really gives you awesome ownership and you really gain a much better understanding of how things work. So, okay, John, thank you. I know what a full stack developer is. I know what front end and back end is. Now, how do I become a full stack developer, right? That's what you guys all want to know. So what I would do if I was a complete beginner is I would try to, get my feet wet with coding. Maybe try something very simple. Try to learn some HTML and some CSS and kind of get your feet wet and see if you enjoy coding. Now, what I would also recommend at this very beginner stage is trying to learn some of the fundamentals of development, just so you have a good understanding of the basics. So what I mean when I talk about this is, try to learn about for loops, arrays, if statements, variables. All of these kind of things are very important to know before you actually start coding. And so I would definitely recommend that. And also in my university, this is kind of the strategy we used as well. The first thing they taught us was, the fundamentals, if statements and all that. And then we kind of built upon that. So I would recommend doing the same thing. A great course to teach you the fundamentals of that is actually a free online course by Harvard called CS50. I have it linked in the description below if you guys want to check it out. I think it's a really good resource to start off and it's completely free. So once you have a decent understanding of the fundamentals, you've kind of tried out HTML and CSS, the natural next step, if you want to become a full stack developer, I would recommend JavaScript. JavaScript is basically what all the websites run on in the browser. And if you're already working with HTML, CSS, and you've kind of, dabbled with making a basic website, then, adding JavaScript to that, adding JavaScript to the front end is kind of the natural next step in my opinion. The great thing about JavaScript is there's so many different things you can do with JavaScript. And it's what a lot of full stack developers use as a language, because with JavaScript, you can work on the front end and the back end. So there's a lot of frameworks for JavaScript like Vue.js, React, and Angular that let you work on a front end and build very, reactive, clean applications. And that's where I would start. I think once you're learning JavaScript, the natural next step for me would be the front end. Try to build a basic website and get it working without any backend yet. Don't include any backend and just kind of get it to work and understand how a website operates and how kind of everything works on the front end. Now, before jumping into the backend, there's a couple of other things I would recommend looking into first. just to, kind of prepare yourself more. So what I'm talking about is before looking at the back end, try to get some experience using databases. So try, using MySQL or Postgres to, create some databases, create some tables, and kind of understand how the whole process works. Create a basic table for like users, for example, and just kind of, understand what it's like to create a database, delete a database, and, insert rows, edit a row in a database. I think that's pretty valuable, especially for a full stack developer, because you're going to be working with databases over and over again. That's kind of what a backend developer in a very simple way does. And after that, I think after you've kind of dabbled with databases, then you can really kind of focus on a backend, because when you're building an API, when you're building an endpoint, it's basically a way for the front end to get data from the database and then kind of do whatever it wants with it, display it on a website, calculate something, whatever you want. But essentially what the front end is doing is it's calling the backend calls the database fetches things for the backend, and then the backend passes that on to the front end. So it's kind of a natural progression, I think, to learn about databases before you learn about the backend, because if you already know a bit about databases, then once you start, dabbling with some backend frameworks, it'll be a lot easier for you to, you'll already have tables set up, you already have relationships set up, and so all you're gonna have to do is kind of, fetch and insert into the databases using your whatever endpoint you're creating. So I think at this point, just try working with some backend. If you're still with JavaScript, if you decided to pick JavaScript, what I would use is Node.js. I've used this a lot in the past in my workplaces and on some side projects, and it's really an awesome language. And again, you're using JavaScript. So you're really taking one language and you're using it for the front end and the back end. You can even use it to as kind of like a way to fetch things from a database as well. And so at this point, I would kind of implement more of a backend. If you have a website that you were working on, I would kind of add a backend to it, maybe add an API, like a login or something like that, and then kind of store usernames and passwords, whatever you want to do. But I really think learning HTML and then kind of getting the fundamentals of programming, dabbling with JavaScript, then naturally progressing to a front-end development, and then I would kind of learn about databases, and then I would go to the back end. And at this point, I think there's a couple of things you're still missing, but I think you have the kind of overall experience of a full stack developer. There are a couple of things that I haven't mentioned today, like testing and like security. Those are definitely big things that full stack developers work on, but those can come later, especially once you're more experienced and once you're working and stuff like that. Testing is definitely important, don't get me wrong, but I just think for this video, I'll keep it for like complete beginners. Now, if you don't want to use JavaScript and you still want to be a full stack developer, do your research. There's a ton of languages that you can use on the front end. There's a ton of languages that you can use on the back end. And a good way to figure out what language to use is you can think about what kind of projects interests you, and then pick a language that facilitates building that project. Or you can look at job postings online and kind of see what jobs interest you the most, and then look at the postings, look at what the required stuff is, and see what languages they're using, what frameworks they're using, and then kind of learn those and implement those into your learning process. There's definitely a ton of languages out there, so be sure to do your research. If you're not going to use JavaScript, if you're not going to follow some of the things in this video, definitely do your research before picking one. There are many languages out there, but it really doesn't matter. If you don't want to use JavaScript, just do some research and pick one. But really, guys, you want to get over this hump of picking a language as soon as possible, because it really doesn't matter that much. But that being said, once you pick a language, I would try to stick with it. I would try to, master it and really get good at it. Over time, over several months, over a year, you're really going to get proficient at it. And then when you start applying to jobs, I think it'll make that process a lot easier than if you start hopping from language to language, from project to project, and then you're kind of like a jack of all trades, but a master of none, right? You're okay in all these languages, but you're not really proficient and masterful at any of them. So guys, if you want to become a full stack developer in 2021, obviously this video is more for you guys that aren't going to school, aren't going to a boot camp, and kind of want to learn to code online by yourselves. So guys, let's take it back. First, start with HTML and CSS. Then I would take, the Harvard CS50 course down below that teaches you about a lot of coding fundamentals like if statements, arrays, for loops, all that stuff. Then I would move on to, learning JavaScript, dabble with that, maybe build your own kind of website, and really start, working on front-end development. Once you've built a couple of side projects, you kind of feel okay with front-end development and you feel like you've progressed. Then I would move on to learning about databases, creating tables, inserting rows, deleting rows, relationships between tables, very valuable information. And I think it is necessary before you start working on the back end. And then after you've kind of dabbled with databases, I would work on, learning about backend development. And once you've kind of dabbled with that, you have all of the tools necessary to build an entire web application, to build anything you want. If you have front-end, database, and back-end development kind of experience, you can really build whatever you want and kind of a complete application. So that's what I would do, guys. Once you have kind of dabbled, you know, okay, I really want to be a full stack developer, build a side project. That's all you got to do. Get coding, get working, and build a side project. Especially if you have no experience, it'll be something to put on your resume. So I would start on that ASAP. All right, guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't noticed, I got a new camera, so the quality of the content is gonna be increasing, guys. We're growing, and there's a lot of awesome content on the way. If you like the video, like I said before, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It's completely free for you guys. It means so much to me, and you can always unsubscribe. Leave a comment down below as well if there's anything you disagree with, if you want to share your own experiences of becoming full stack developers, or if you think, you know, I'm just completely wrong, leave a comment down below. And as always, guys, take it easy and have a good day.